guys, welcome back to my channel and happy Pride! Today I'm going to be recommending some LGBTQ plus sci-fi and fantasy books. Now, most of the time when I see LGBTQ plus recommendations, the list of books is contemporary, which is great that the contemporary genre is coming out with so many more LGBTQ plus books. But I still think that sci-fi and fantasy, particularly adult sci-fi and fantasy, is still lacking a little bit in the diversity department. So I am bringing to you some amazing recommendations of sci-fi and fantasy books with LGBTQ plus characters. The first two I'm just gonna get out of the way because you've heard me mention them a million times, and that is Every Hearted Doorway and Down Among Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. These are the first two books in the Wayward Children series, and it is about children who have found a magical door or portal to another world. They went there, they had their adventures, and now they are back in the regular human world, and they aren't able to cope with readjusting back into society. So they go to this boarding school, which is what Every Hearted Doorway is about. First book follows an asexual protagonist, and there is a trans side character. And then Down Among Sticks and Bones takes place following two children in their portal world, and this has a female-female relationship. You guys know this is my favorite series in the whole world, so these are two that I can't recommend enough. The next one is another one of my favorites, and that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is a sci-fi space opera that follows the crew of this ship called the Wayfarer. Hey, can you stop eating my rug? He's starved for attention. I've been filming all day and he's so upset. I love you. Okay, back to this. So like I said, it follows the crew of a ship called the Wayfarer, and basically the ship is like a maintenance ship. They go around punching holes through space so that people can travel places quicker, if that makes sense. They're basically like the space equivalent of road workers. My favorite thing about this book is the exploration of gender, sexuality, race, humanity. This book basically explores every type of relationship, every type of sexuality, every type of gender. The spectrum of identities is massive because there aren't just humans in this book. There are so many alien species that just approach gender and sexuality in a completely different way than humans do. Like, we have an alien species that start out as one gender at the beginning of their life and slowly evolve into another gender. We have another alien species who expresses emotions through physical and intimate touch. There is also a female-female relationship. I just love this book so much. I highly recommend it. This is even a book I think people who don't love sci-fi or aren't well versed in sci-fi, it's very approachable sci-fi. Next, we're just knocking off all my faves. We have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, which is, again, one of my all-time favorite books. This is a fantasy with some sci-fi elements laced throughout. And in this world, there are people called orogenes who have the power to connect with the earth and control the elements. And because they have this power, they are very feared by the other citizens in the world who don't have this power. So they are oppressed and treated as second-class citizens. They are barely given any rights, and they're just treated really horribly. In this world, there are things called seasons, which are huge natural disasters that completely wipe out everything. And so at the beginning of this book, there is a huge season that causes a lot of destruction, and we are following three different narratives. One of them being a mother who, at the very start, she walks into her house and finds her 2-year-old son had been murdered by her husband, and her daughter was taken. So she is now on a journey to find her daughter. Then we are following a child who is an orogene and was taken to study at Fulcrum, which is basically this training facility for orogenes to get control of their power and then work for the government in trying to maintain these natural disasters. And then the third narrative is following a woman in her 20s, I want to say, who is a 4-ring Origine, meaning she's like a level 4, who had studied at the Fulcrum, and she is going on a mission with a top tier ring Origine. This is hands down one of the most well-written, well-thought-out books I've ever read in my life. There is a polyamorous relationship between a woman and 2 men, and that relationship is just so dynamic and complex between the 3 of them, and it is really beautiful, and I enjoyed it so much. And there's also a trans side character. So yeah, if you haven't read this book yet, I can't express how much I love it. So now we're moving on to a book that I personally didn't like that much, but it wasn't because of the LGBTQ representation. And that is The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. This is a standalone fantasy that takes place in our world, and there is this glass coffin with a horned boy inside of it, and he has been there for years, just sleeping. And the main character has grown up around him and always seeing him. And then one day, the glass coffin breaks and the boy goes missing, so she kind of gets swept up in this adventure trying to figure out what is going on, and she ends up traveling to the fairy realm. In this book, the main character's brother has a relationship with the horned boy, so there is a male-male romance in this book, which I really enjoyed. It was one of my favorite aspects of this book. Even though I didn't like the book as a whole, I really enjoyed that relationship, and I think that this was a case of this book just wasn't for me, but I think other people will enjoy it, so that is why I am adding it onto this list. The next book is Ash by Melinda Lowe. This is a Cinderella retelling with a female-female relationship. This is one of my favorite fairy tale retellings that I've ever read, because unlike a lot of the other ones I've read that are a retelling, they kind of take the fairy tale aspect out of it, and what I loved about this book is it still really feels like a fairy tale. It feels like something that I could find in an old storybook, and the romance in this book was so beautiful. I really loved it. And another thing that I just love about this book so much is that this came out in a time when LGBTQ YA books weren't so popular. I just am really appreciative of Melinda Lowe for kind of paving the way for these types of stories to come out now, and we're seeing so many more being published these days, which is just great. But I want to make sure that we're going back and giving love to those books that did pave the way for our faves to be here. And the last book I'm going to be talking about is probably one of the weirdest books on this list, and that is River of Teeth by Sarah Gailey. So kind of to explain this book, I have to explain where the idea came from. So basically in the early 20th century, the US government came up with a plan to breed and slaughter hippos as a meat source. Obviously that never happened, but the author thought, what if it did? Enter River of Teeth. We have an 1890s America where Louisiana is just overrun by feral hippos, and we follow some mercenary hippo wranglers, and it is just such a weird little book that I really enjoyed. It's a lot of fun, and there is a non-binary character who throughout the book was referred to as they. So those were my LGBTQ plus sci-fi and fantasy recommendations. Let me know in the comments if you have any other recommendations, because I am always looking for more. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!